Right, so for some up and coming projects I actually need a table saw because I need to rip down some boards into the right length that I want them, and I've wanted one of these for a little while. Now, just to let you know, I actually went to the trouble of buying this. I haven't been sent it to unbox it, so it's one that I've bought. Now, I went for the Evolution because I have an Evolution chop saw, and it really does do what it says. It'll cut through steel, copper, plastic, aluminium and wood, no problem at all. It'll cut up to 3mm thick steel, which is pretty impressive really, and 85mm timber, which is a good chunk of timber. So we've got a nice saw here that is going to do a bit of work. Now, it is not meant for everyday use all day long to build things like cabinets. It's something I'm going to use intensively for a couple of projects, then it'll sit around for a bit, and then it'll be used intensively for a bit. So that's the kind of tool I want, because you can spend anything on these. You spend about 100 quid on them, or you can spend 10,000 on them. It's just anything. And that's a problem, obviously, when deciding what it is that you're going to buy. Now, I made that choice because that's the jobs I'm going to be doing, is how I'm going to be using it. So when you're thinking about buying a tool, that's how you're thinking about. You're thinking about how you're going to use it and which tool is going to best fit that use profile that you have. So I have that use profile. I have experience of this Evolution saw type, and I've always found them to be a good build and the blade to do what it says it does, and so I found them to be quite a good tool, which is why I went for this one. Now, it's not terribly expensive. I paid £200 for it, so it's kind of at the bottom to sort of mid-range of that kind of tool that you'd be expecting, and I went for it because a lot of these Evolution saws actually do pretty well. Now, what we're going to do is unbox it, have a look what's inside the box, put it together, and then do a couple of cuts with it. So let's get into the box. Okay, so that's what you get in the box. There's a table saw itself. It's a 255mm diameter blade with 24 teeth, and you can see the blade cutting direction right there. It's supposed to do an 85mm cut, obviously, so it's got a decent amount of blade. It raises and lowers with the handle on the side, right there. So that raises and lowers, and that changes the angle. There's our on-off emergency switching right there. And it's, you know, 1.3 kilowatt motor, so it's going to have a bit of oomph. It turns at 3,200 RPM. And overall, I mean, it's what I expected it to be. There's a tiny, tiny little bump here, and there's a little bow to this table where clearly it's been knocked at some point or other. And there's a little bit of blemish here in the finish work. But then it's a £200 saw, so what do you expect? Everything comes in the box, including the book with dire warnings in the book about minding your fingers and reading the instructions. Now, if you're like me, then you don't bother reading the instructions and you've got only yourself to blame, because I deal with these things like a VCR recorder or whatever it is. I never read the instructions. I just press a few buttons randomly to see what's going to happen. But apparently everything is stamped to tell you what goes where. And I'm not seeing that. Oh yes, I am. Right there. It's got a stamp on it telling me which bits go where. So if I follow the instructions, and I'm supposed to be able to put this together really easily, I'm of course not really going to do that. I'm going to look at the picture and give it a go myself. First thing is to turn this upside down and stick the legs on. So let's lower that blade so we at least don't damage the blade. That's kind of cool, actually. And flip it over. Okay, so that's it together. Now, it is what it is. I mean, the body was plastic, so you have to be careful not to over-torque the screws that fit the pressed steel legs into the plastic. But I just followed the book, and I did have to look at the book a couple of times, which I was a bit disappointed about, and that was to fix this measurement guide here. This a really weird setup of bolts. You basically put your bolts in, slide the guide on, and then adjust it by using this rip guard and fasten it back up again. I did have to check how to do that, but it was in the book, so, you know, just read the book. It comes with a few bits and pieces you'd expect. It's got a nice mitre guide, it's got the rip guide, it's got the blade guard, little push stick, which is obviously very handy. And, I mean, you know, it looks pretty, but then every tool out of the box looks pretty, doesn't it? It is what it is. I didn't buy it for its looks. I bought it so I could rip some timber down and see how it actually does. So, let's get some cutting done. Wow, that was quick, and talk about accurate. So I cut down 4 3mm by 2.4mm by 1.2m pieces of plywood into these 50mm strips that we've got here, and I've got 125 of them, and they're all the same, and it was incredibly quick. I know I'm not taxing it, but good saw. I mean, that really did the job. The thing about table saws is it's got to be a tool that you have a need for. I've obviously got a project going on, so keep in touch with what this project is doing, but I needed that because it saved me a fortune on the timber. If I'd had to buy this timber like this, the cutting price alone is the price of the saw. It's just incredible the price you pay. So it saved me the money, it's done a beautifully accurate job, and I have a job for it. And if that's the case, then it's a good tool to buy, but it's like any tool. You buy a tool when you have a job for it, and then you buy the tool that's appropriate, because like I say, I'm going to use this intensively for a couple of projects. It's going to sit around for ages and then get more use and so on, which is why I chose that particular saw there. Now Luke's not had a chance to see this or give it a go, but he does love his cabinet making, so chances are he's going to be able to do some beautiful stuff with that table saw on slightly heavy duty material, because of course I didn't tax this at 3mm, but it zipped through the job and I'm awfully pleased with it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the unboxing. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe.